Hello and welcome to the Astrological Commission podcast. I'm your host, ISAR Bay. We have a special guest with us today, somebody who has uh, been, I would imagine, would be somebody who I would say is one of the premier or one of the, I call great astrological astrologers, I would believe, to walk the face of the earth. And we will get into why I feel that way. And hopefully by the end of this interview, you will understand and see as well. Somebody who has accomplished a lot, who has been on the forefront, who has been one who has pushed astrology forward tremendously in so many different ways. I am talking about none other than Miss Madalyn Hillis-Dineen. How you doing, Madalyn?
I'm doing well, and I just hope I can live up to that introduction.
You certainly will. You certainly will. Madalyn, tell us a little bit, how were you first introduced into astrology?
Well, my earliest introduction, I guess, happened, when I in my early teens, maybe around 13, and I sort of became fascinated with astrology, and I think at some point, maybe a little later on, I got hold of a book called Write Your Own Horoscope by Joseph Goodavage, and I didn't understand it at all, and I didn't know where to get an ephemeris. And, I was probably more interested in boys and college and having fun, being in a sorority eventually, finishing high school, going to college. So I just kind of let it go. When I was I got married. I married a chiropractor who I had met while I was in high school. He wasn't a chiropractor then, but he became a chiropractor. And one day, an astrologer walked into his office and wanted to barter. And I had just stopped working. I had been working in the banking industry, and then I worked for the New York Chiropractors Association and as their assistant director, and which, helped me with nonprofit organization experience, which would come in handy as time went on. This astrologer wanted to barter services, and my ex-husband said to me, "Well, you've always liked astrology. Why don't you go get your chart done?" And so I did, and that it was with Gary Kristen, who is the owner of Astrolabe and has been my friend for, I guess that was, let me think, what year is this? 2024, that was 1979, so 45 years ago. And so he did my chart, and I just could not believe the kinds of things he was telling me. And I became fascinated with it. And then, I ran into him in my ex-husband's office, and I said, well, that was very interesting. Do you have a book? Can you recommend a book? And he did. And he said, you got the bug? And I said, yeah. And then another time I saw him again, because I was working there sort of part-time. Another time I saw him again, and I said, can you recommend a teacher? And he said, well, I don't usually take beginners because I'll take you. You have the chart of an astrologer. And so it began. And
wow.
And he taught me Uranian astrology. And he said, there are other ways of doing astrology, but I'm going to teach you this way. So, and then, and then eventually I found out, yeah, there are other ways of doing astrology. But, that's been, that was key because it's a self-enclosed system, and there aren't that many people that know it and teach it, and it became, I was on the circuit then, and I had this like little specialty. So, and then later on, I picked up another specialty, astrocartography. That was much later on.
Yes, that's amazing. I never knew that you and Gary met like that. That's unbelievable, man. Wow. Gary Christian is definitely one of the greats. We will also be reaching out to him as well. But yeah, that's absolutely amazing that how you guys met. It's almost like the universe, it was meant to be, how you guys met and connected. So now, after you have learned Uranian astrology, which I am in Uranian as well, and after you guys have learned, you've learned Uranian, who were some of your other teachers, or what other paths did you take after that? Did you just stay with Uranian, or did you study with other people?
I didn't, I studied with another Uranian, Wayne Boer, for a little while, and but I never really studied formally with any one particular person. But I attended many, back in the day, in New York City, the New York NCGR would hold conferences like at Pace University and other places. There was a Hunter College. Hunter came later. But at Pace University, and so I would go to those classes and sit in. I especially had high regard for Joanna Shannon and Julian Ormstead and people like that in the New York scene. But there was something that I wanted to say, just going back a minute to the Uranian. I just can't remember what it is. It'll come back to me, and if that's okay.
Okay. One of my favorite lectures of yours, because I'm from New York as well, and I used to go with my teacher Dave Young. We used to go to FIT and all of the other Uranian conferences all the NCGR conferences they had in New York.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite lectures of yours were two of them, which were the meridian of the day, and you have to be a Uranian to really understand what the meridian of the day is. But it was a lecture that you did on the meridian of the day, and then also the astrocartography lecture that you did. So, I've been, so many lectures I have of yours that I've attended. I still have old cassette tapes downstairs with you teaching, Uranian and teaching astrocartography.
Yeah.
At one point, you ended up becoming the president of NCGR. How did that happen?
Well, that was the other thing that one of the other, that may be what I was trying to remember when he said, you have the chart of an astrologer. Then he was moving up here to Cape Cod, and I was still down in the area, and he introduced me to some of the people in NCGR. Bruce Schofield is another person who had a big influence on me. I didn't formally study with him, but we were friends because he was a good friend of Gary's, and we became friends. And, just a lot of my knowledge just grew from, conversing and talking with people. And as you know, in these conferences, just chatting in the hallway, you sometimes got more than, what you would get at the lecture. And another thing that I did was in the NCGR. So, well, Gary said, one day you're going to be a big deal in astrology, in the organizations. And he said, you'll probably end up, he was so, I don't know, was it a self-fulfilling prophecy or was he that intuitive? But he said, you'll end up being on the board of NCGR, and I thought that was crazy. And at that time, they were just then developing the education program, the 4-level certification. It was a relatively, new organization, and I got involved in the chapter, though, in the New Jersey chapter. And when there was a woman, Mimi Levine, who is definitely another early mentor of mine. And Mimi, she when Gary moved up here, she took over and became president of the NCGR. And there was a woman who was the secretary. I don't remember her name, and even if I did, I wouldn't say it. She was the secretary because she kind of had like a crush on Gary, I guess. And so she when he quit, she quit. So Mimi needed a secretary. So Gary told her, use this woman, use my student. And so we started organizing. One of the first things she had me do was call up Sam Crawford and arrange for him to come and lecture. And she taught me a lot about, she gave me the opportunity. She would have me call all these people, Michael Luton, and when a lot of them, didn't have cars, especially if they were New York City bound. And I lived in New Jersey, but I would go over to the city and pick people up, and then bring them to the meeting in New Jersey and then take them back. And those car rides were very educational, So even though I didn't really formally study with these people, I got to pick their brains. Another one that really stands out is Charles Jane. He didn't live in Manhattan, but he lived up in, north of us in New York State. And I went to get him and drove him around. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I had the opportunity of going to the Astrological Association last year at a conference in London, and while I was there, Steve Pincus was there, and he was teaching a lecture on Uranian astrology. Now, I had known Steve. We had known each other over the phone and through text message, but we had never met face-to-face. I'm a student of Arlene Kramer's, and so he was connected to Arlene. And so we finally got to meet face-to-face. And so he tells me, he says, I'm leaving here right now, and I'm going to Germany, over to Hamburg, Germany, to go to the Hamburg Uranian Astrology Conference that they're having in Hamburg, Germany. And so I ended up reaching out to Michael Feist, and he told me that this year, October of this year, I believe, or is it next year? Maybe this year or next year, is they're celebrating 100 years of Uranian astrology. And so I thought that was absolutely amazing that they're getting ready to celebrate their 100-year anniversary. And I just thought that, anybody who's listening, I've always told people that Uranian astrology is the best system in the world. I feel like it takes the flat chart and just magnifies it. I mean, there's stuff that you can see with Uranian that you would never see on the flat chart. So many different things you can do. It's an amazing tool. And I think that, I'm probably going to be one of the people who definitely keeps it going and definitely tries to push it out there, because you don't really see too many Uranians out there as we used to do. Like back when I was younger, Uranian astrology was talked about a lot. Like even at the Astrological Association conference, not too many people were in the lecture for Uranian, So I know Uranian doesn't really have the broad spectrum that it should have, but I am going to be a person that will possibly take that challenge to put it on the forefront, because I think that is something that it's an amazing system that I think a lot of people need to use and to work with.
Well, you can do in terms of forecasting, which is, I know that there's a trend in astrology to use it for personality and, insights into your spiritual life and your development. But I think a lot of people, or at least the ones that come to me, want concrete stuff. They want, like, the best time to sign an agreement. They want, when should I put my house on the market? They want, when will I sell my house that's on the market? Things like that. Very concrete things. And, the beauty of Uranian is that you can forecast from a very general, what's the thrust of the year, all the way down to, you mentioned progressed meridian of the day, all the way down to a daily read, and that particular point, I think, is pretty, usually tells you a lot about what your day is going to be like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's a great science. What are some of your favorite things about Uranian? Like, for me, one of the things I love, and I've actually talked to Gary about this sometimes, of how we use the Capricorn ingress for our sort of forecasting outlook for the year ahead, and
right.
Of course the solar arcs and just all the dial work. But I believe that it's an amazing tool, and I just believe that the stuff that I've seen, it's absolutely amazing with it, that I've never seen in any other system like Uranian. So I just think it's absolutely amazing.
Well, it is, and I agree. When I said forecast for the year ahead, that's the winter solstice chart. To just get the thrust of that, using that particular tool. Another thing I like is that I just love the symmetry between the planets. And I remember once, I have a good friend who's a Vedic astrologer. And when we were getting to know each other, we decided to do each other's charts. And she gave me, and on the fly, I hadn't had time to look at it. We were on the telephone, and I put her chart in, and I thought, I took one look at it, and within the first minute I said, wow, when you're 43, your whole chart is going to pop. And she said, how did you do that? And how I did it was like really simple. She had a lot of things in her chart that were 2 degrees apart. And it's the arc openings. And so something that's 2 degrees apart, if you subtract it from 45, which is, the 8th harmonic, and is, the 8th harmonic is what makes the world run, right? The cardinal axis plus the cross quarters. If you subtract 2 from 45, you get 43. And it's stuff like that. You can just look at that kind of thing. The arc opening, the beauty of the symmetry is in as Victor said, it's not the aspects of the planets, but the symmetry between them.
Yes.
The character and destiny of a person.
And so now, you've met Gary Christian, as you said already, through the whole chiropractor bartering. We're going to barter each other. Your ex-husband gives you the opportunity to get the reading from Gary Christian. So
Yep.
you're meeting him at this point. So you're actually at the point now where you're with Gary in the beginning, and now we're going into his how do you make your journey as an astrologer, as the president of NCGR, lecturing and teaching, now entering into the astrolabe? How does that happen?
Well, so Gary was, my teacher, and then he moved up here shortly after I started studying with him. And I would come up. I have to say, before I ever met Gary, I came on a vacation to Cape Cod, and I had a Uranian flash that I would live here one day. And I, of course, had no idea how that was going to come about. But anyway, he moved up here, and I would come to visit from time to time. And eventually what happened was I was involved with the NCGR, and Michael Erlewine, who ran at that time was the head of Matrix, he started we started talking, and I went to one of his conferences that he had out there. He expressed an interest in hiring me, and that was in 1988. And I went there, and I didn't want to move to Michigan at that time, but it was an interesting place. I met John Townley there, a couple of other people. Bill Meridian was at this conference. It was a financial conference. It was a great conference. I had a great time when I was there. John Townley was there. I don't know if I said that already. Anyway, and I came back, and then, I started, I became the executive director of NCGR. I was working in 1988. I was working in a nursery school, a Montessori school, and I forget what year it was now. Maybe 91, either 1990 or 1991. The NCGR decided they wanted to have a paid administrator for their office, and as I said, I had been an administrator or associate director of the New York State Chiropractic Association, right? Another nonprofit. So I had some insight into that kind of work, nonprofit work, and so they hired me. They basically paid me what I was making teaching at the Montessori school, and and everything in my life has kind of fallen into place. This is such an aside, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Maria Montessori, I never got full certification, but I did take some Montessori training. And one of the first things you read about, Montessori schools are famous for their circles. The children sit in a circle and share things and whatever. Well, she didn't say to have children sit in a circle. She said, have children sit in an ellipse, the way the planets orbit the sun. And so anyway, so they paid me what I was getting paid at the Montessori school, and I started the office for them and got to know a lot more people in that job, especially Jim Lewis, who called the office one day, and he didn't approve of something because that was Jim. And he said, I don't function well as a rubber stamp. We had a vote, and basically if you didn't vote, it meant you didn't disagree. And so he called to voice his objection, and I thought that was one of the funniest things I ever heard. And we started talking, and with him, we put on, I said, well, I would love to, do an astrocartography workshop here in the East, or go to one. And he said, I need somebody to sponsor and run one, and would you do that? And so I did. But anyway, so it was through NCGR, Matrix. Michael offered me a job. So then after my mother died she died in November of 1993. And, I'm a Cancer. So even though I have Gemini rising, I have all this air stuff and Aquarius moon. The only thing I have in Cancer is the sun, but apparently that's enough, and Uranus. Apparently that's enough. I wasn't going to leave my mother. I'm an only child, and so anyway, after she passed, I was free, and they offered me a job out in Michigan, and I was at an ISAR conference in '94 representing the NCGR there. I don't think I was a lecturer, but I went from there and up to Michigan. It was in Chicago, and I went up to Michigan and kind of got the lay of the land. And lo and behold, when they made me that offer, Rob Hand, who was associated with Astrolabe at the time, and Gary Kristen made me a counteroffer, and so I moved. I'll never forget, a tarot card reader said to me, "Oh, you're going to take the job that's near the water." So she said, "I guess you're going to go to Michigan." Well, that's what somebody in Chicago would say, because they think of Lake Michigan as water. And I said, well, I think that means Cape Cod, because, we're out in the middle of the ocean here. Next stop, Portugal. So that's how I ended up at Astrolabe.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Before I go even deeper than that, I wanted to kind of come back a little bit and tell us about your interaction with Jim Lewis. As a matter of fact, what you may not remember is many, many years ago, I called you for a consultation, and we talked. We looked at my chart. I was moving, because I'm originally from New York, so I was moving from New York to Vegas. I was in Vegas at the time, and I was contemplating moving to Minnesota, where my Jupiter line is connected, it's conjunct my relocated midheaven, or to move to San Antonio, Texas, where Venus would be conjunct my relocated midheaven, and Venus is the lord of my chart because I have Libra rising and it's exalted in Pisces. Venus is in Pisces. So anyway, I went to you, and here I am. I think I know a couple of things about astrocartography, and you started teaching me about the Purans and all the other things that I didn't even care to look at or know about. But I ended up taking your advice, and I ended up where I am now, which is in San Antonio, Texas. But tell us a little bit about your journey through in learning about astrocartography and some of the great things that you've seen and learned and discovered about it.
Well, yeah. So, as I said, I got along, well with Jim, and we had a lot of nice synastry, So we decided to do the workshop. We did it in Cranton. It was very interesting because he's a little. He insisted that we had to have a hotel where he could open the windows. And nowadays they don't build hotels like that with windows because they don't want people jumping out of them. That was a journey in and of itself. The time we spent in the car looking for the right hotel to have our thing. But anyway, one of the very first things that he taught about was Purans, and I was really skeptical because the concept of the Puran, which is basically all it is simultaneous angularity. So, for instance, you might have Venus on the midheaven with Jupiter rising. And that will occur over the course of a day because of the Earth's rotation on its axis at every degree of longitude, but always at the same latitude. And so the theory is that latitude becomes sensitized to that planetary energy. So even though the Venus-Jupiter, the actual crossing of the two lines, might be happening in, Tokyo, you're going to feel it in New York. And I was pretty skeptical about that. And being somebody who basically, I just, I lived in Brooklyn, and then I lived in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. I hadn't been anywhere yet. I had not moved up to Cape Cod, which is still all pretty much a similar latitude. But there was a woman who was in the class, and she went home. It was like a 3-day workshop. And she went home, and she took all the lists of her crossings and came back the next day and related how every, crossing made sense for the things that happened to her on those latitudes. So she had moved up and down the East Coast, and in one place, she had a big argument with her sisters, and in another place she met, a significant relationship, and so on and so forth. And and then I started working with it. And of course, as you start working with things and looking at them, you say, wow, this stuff really works. So that's how my journey began. I passed the at that time when you took the certification exam. And I think that's what I wanted to tell you. Right now I'm with Purans, I'm in the middle of grading certification exams, the latest batch of people who want to become certified astrocartography interpreters. And some of them are not using Purans at all. And I'm not giving, I'm taking points off because to me, you have to look at that. You might have that great, that Venus line going through, the middle of the country, Jupiter on the midheaven or Venus on the midheaven. But you need to find out, well, where along that, should I be? And it's the Purans that determine the latitude. The angularity of the lines is the longitude, but the Purans help you discover where in latitude you should be. And so I forgot my train of thought. This is happening. This is what happens when you get to be 73.
73 years, you're old, young. That's great. That's great. But I like I said, when I came to you, you were able to really enlighten me on the Purans because I had never really, I heard about them, but I never really looked at them and never really knew how they interacted with everything that I was looking at. And you're absolutely right. Like I've had nothing to complain about since I've been in San Antonio. But one of the things I wanted to say for those who are listening is that when you look at relocation astrology on a Uranian dial, it's going to show you something that you would never see anywhere else. And what I mean by that is, for instance, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and when you put the relocation midheaven and ascendant on the chart, you can put the dial pointer on there and you can look at what falls on the axis.
Right.
What happens is some people were like, well, how come you didn't move to Houston? How come you didn't move to Dallas? But if I go and put the relocated midheaven, the relocated angles of Houston on my chart, and I put the pointer on there, it falls on the Mars Saturn midpoint.
Right.
So somebody who is just looking at the flat chart, they would never even seen that.
Right.
And so that's why I say Uranian is so amazing, because that's something that you would need to know as well as all the other stuff. You would need to see what falls on the axis of where I'm going to be moving, where I'm going to travel. You just kind of want to know what's on the axis. You kind of want to investigate and see everything. So that's
Exactly.
why it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. Another way to get that same information, um, uh, well, more or less the same information. The dial gives you even more, but in solar fire, solar maps, you can add midpoint lines. So once I find a place, um, or if the person, sometimes people come to you and they know where they want to go, or they want to choose between two or three different places, which is better, blah blah blah. um, that's the third factor. After the actual planet lines, then we have the parans, and then I look at midpoints. And as you said, Mars Saturn midpoint, yeah, not great. So we'll go with we'll get away from it, and that gets pretty specific, because the orb for that is really no more than 45 miles, maybe 60, because 60 miles is 1 degree. So 45, 40, up to 1 degree would be the orb for that, or 60 miles east or west of the midpoint line. And so that narrows things down significantly. So that's always the third thing that I look at. And of course, the relocated chart too.
And what are some of the most fascinating things, or maybe some of the testimonials from your clients that you have gotten about astrocartography, about the different things you've told them, and when they moved there, it's like, oh my God, this happened, that happened.
Yeah, well, there was one that I remember pretty well, is that, he was living in the Northwest, and he actually was out here in Boston for an NCGR conference when I first met him, and then dovetailed with that conference. We had a Uranian weekend, or a couple of days anyway. Probably wasn't the weekend, because the conference was probably on the weekend. So they could, some people wanted to come and do more with us, and he was one of those people. And I looked at his astrocartography, and I thought that, he would do much better in Florida. He just had, so much stuff going on in the Northwest that was, a little more difficult and challenging. And, sometimes people get to the point in life where, they're tired of stress and tired of the hard work, and now it's time to, just have a little bit of an easier life. And he had some great lines in Florida. And interestingly enough, there are a bunch of women from Florida that were also doing this Uranian weekend. So he had already expanded his social life, and that's what he wanted. A little bit more of a social life, a place where his health could improve, and he didn't need to work anymore, but to just have a little peace of mind and serenity. So he goes to Florida, and he used to write me all the time. And actually, I think it came up in my solar fire today that today is his birthday. So I thought I would send him a little note to see how it's going there. So he hasn't yet met the love of his life. That was one of his objectives. He hasn't, but he did meet a woman that he had a relationship for a while. I'm going back years now. And he also his health improved. He said, almost immediately his health improved. But not only did his health improve, but his cat's health improved, which he was eternally grateful for. So I guess, everybody's talking about cat ladies now, but I guess he was a cat guy, and he was very, very excited that his cat's health had improved. And there was another one. There was a woman that I think her testimonial is on my website. She wrote something like, I saved her thousands of dollars by helping her, make a decision about where to buy a house versus another place. And I get a lot of really good feedback from people, and I get, I get some nice referrals, and I get a lot of repeat clients. So I guess I am probably doing a few things right, and I'm sure there are people that I wasn't on. When you do this, a lot of it is your synastry with the person too. So it is, in my experience, it isn't always perfect connections, but I've been lucky. I've been blessed.
Yes. One of the things too that I wanted to talk about is, your journey has been amazing to me to see, when I first came in contact with you, which is about maybe 15, 20 years ago, when I actually lived in New York, and then going to the lectures of NCGR, learning about astrocartography, of course, the Uranian. Of course, like I said, my favorite is the meridian of the day technique you showed us, and you gave us some great examples of things that happened. Like I said, you would really want, those that are listening will really want to take a peek and dive into really learning about Uranian astrology, the transnets, everything that's included with it. It's just an amazing tool, amazing system. And I think that, it's something that everybody needs to be knowledgeable about. You had the opportunity to meet Gary Christian, to take this journey. You've gone through NCGR. You became the president at one time. You're still affiliated. You're educational, part of the educational department. Now we're looking into solar fire and Nova chart wheels. So tell us about these astrological softwares. Nova chart wheels, of course, is for Uranians. It's an amazing software. I have to admit that when it first came out, I was skeptical. And the reason is because as a Uranian, I'm so used to holding the dial in my hand that I didn't know how I would feel being able to do what I was doing by spinning the dial, but being able to do it on the computer. But it's absolutely phenomenal. So tell us about, of course, Solar Fire, and then tell us about this great journey that you and Gary have been, pretty much connected into of pulling out Nova chart wheels.
Well, of course, Solar Fire is our flagship program. It's our bread and butter here. We're working on a Mac, native Mac version. It'll really be one program that'll work on your Mac computer and also work on your PC. So you wouldn't have to buy two different versions, but it'll work on a Mac without the Windows emulators like Parallels and Virtual PC and those things. So, we started out with when I joined Astrology, we were on version, or just about to release version 3, I guess. We're now working on version 10, which will be that multi-platform version. The version 10 is actually going to include some of the features from Nova Chart Wheels. So the dials will be improved, and one of the things that, and I guess I'm going to be doing this on Sunday for the Uranian Society, for people that don't have Nova Chart Wheels, and remember we were talking about the arc openings. You can look down a difference list in solar fire, the opening between two planets, right? And whatever that number is at around that age, those two planets are going to come due for you. And planets that are together, so like if two different pairs of planets have the same arc opening, regardless of whether or not they are connected in any other way, they will act together, and they will always act together because they're in symmetry. So the journey with solar fire has been incredible. We've sold a lot of programs, and I'm happy for that. When it came to Nova Chart Wheels, so the Nova Chart Wheels story for me goes back to 1979, sitting in Gary's kitchen, having a little dinner after a class, and him telling me that one day we will have a software program for this. And that's the other thing I wanted to say. Now I remember exactly what it was. The earlier version for DOS, of Nova Chart Wheels, it was the UAC in New Orleans, the first New Orleans UAC, which I think was probably 1989, and they were introducing Nova Chart Wheels there, and it had I can't even remember now if it had a dial or not, but Rob Hand said to me, "Give me a significant date in your life," and I told him, March 3rd, 1979, and he was looking at it, and, he started saying all this stuff, which I don't remember now, but he said, "So is that when you met a relationship, an important person in your life?" But he was thinking more romantic, and I said, "No, that's when I met astrology." And that was the day of my reading with Gary, where I thought, and I had already met Gary, right? But this was the day I had my reading, and I saw what astrology could do. And so that was very significant for me. Moving forward, when I came here, we started working, long after I came here. We started working a few years after. We started working on this Windows version of Nova Chart Wheels. And it's amazing. And there was something about when you would draw the chart. I don't know how Arlene Kramer taught you, but I was taught to, use the 90 and the 360. And we had manila folders. And in the manila folder, you could keep notes about the person or whatever. And I used to calculate charts by hand in the beginning. Before, it's kind of my start in astrology in 1979 even predated the computers. There was astro computing services, but people didn't even have astrology programs on their personal computers. So I was doing everything by hand. And, so I would keep all my paperwork inside the folder, and one side I would take the dial and you'd put a thumbtack through it and fasten that with an eraser or something like that, a cork from a wine bottle, and you would draw the planets where they were supposed to be, and then you would do the 90-degree dial on the other side of the manila folder, and that was what we had. And I still have a bunch of those that I did, way back when. When you think about it, so the dial itself, every time it got reproduced, got maybe a little bit more distorted. And how thin was your pencil? No matter how, so the precision, I'm not saying that it was terrible. You had to be very careful, and the precision was such that, the computer totally blows it away. So that's what's great about the software program. But while you're drawing, and this was my experience, while you were drawing, you would get insight. I would start to feel the chart just in the act of putting the planets around the dial myself.
Yes.
But so we lose that with the software, but we gain the precision because solar arc moves, about 5 minutes every month, and on a dial, those 5 minutes are, if you're drawing a really thick line, you don't really know exactly. You can make an estimate. So anyway, the other lovely thing about the program is you could save formulas in it. I have, a happy, a successful day formula. I have, the progress meridian of the day, the progress meridian of the year, a formula for the commander-in-chief, which I have used very successfully to demonstrate this program, not program, but system. When you look back at every president all the way back, I think I did some of Roosevelt, but certainly starting with John Kennedy, who, is both he's textbook astrocartography. May he rest in peace. His astrocartography is amazing. And so was a character, Andrew Cunanan, who killed Johnny Versace and a bunch of other people, right along his Mars line. And most of the times he did it like he stole a red car or he bludgeoned them to death with an axe. It was all very Mars. It's things like that, like those ahas, right? Isn't that what makes the whole thing worthwhile?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, okay. The other thing that has happened to me in my journey is that I come from a family that was rather religious, Catholic. I had 16 years of Catholic education. In my high school, during the time I was there, I was the youngest, but in the grade ahead of me was Mary Plum, who was an editor of the Mountain Astrologer, and and obviously has become an astrologer. And a year or two ahead of her was her sister Katie Plum, who's a very accomplished astrologer in Long Island. Now, this is a school that had never had more than 350 people in it at least the high school at any one time. And to think that they produced 3 working astrologers, specifically in that time period, I graduated in '68, is kind of amazing to me. And but anyway, my rebellion, I had an uncle that was a bishop in the Catholic Church, and there were always priests and nuns all around my mom's home. She would entertain a lot. She entertained his friends a lot, other bishops and whatnot. And, my rebellion was to say, first I think I said I was an atheist, and then I moved on to being an agnostic, and then I got into astrology. And when those aha moments, right, those kinds of things reawakened a spirituality in me that, was obviously put there by 16 years of religious education, but I could see the creator, right? The creator of all this.
Yes.
And the synchronicity. I don't pretend to know how it works. I certainly don't know why it works, but I just know that it works.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because you have been a blessing to so many, including myself. I wanted to just give you your flowers and tell you how much we appreciate you, and to let you know that you are one of you, Gary, everything that you guys are doing are being on the forefront, pushing the needle in astrology, pushing astrology forward. Solar Fire has to be the most dominant, the most used software. Now, there's other softwares, don't get me wrong, but everybody I talk to, anybody who's a serious astrologer, who's a practicing astrologer, maybe those of you who are studying astrology, there's other softwares, but predominantly, I would say everybody uses Solar Fire. And I think that what you guys are doing is absolutely phenomenal. Nova Chartwells, as a Uranian, is the cherry on top. It's the icing on the cake. And just to know that what you guys are doing, you're continuing to get better. You're continuing to work on it. You're continuing to push the envelope to go further. More technology, make it more faster, make it more precise. Everything that you guys are doing. And like I said, Solar Fire is everybody's using it. I think that I had wanted you to come on here because I wanted to give you your flowers. We wanted to say thank you. We appreciate you, because I don't know how many people are actually, you've been doing so much, you've been in this so long, and I know you feel the love and you feel everything, but I don't know if anybody has ever told you, Madalyn, we just want to say thank you, because you're doing such of a great thing. You didn't have to do this. This is something that you doing with learning astrology, with teaching, with the astrocartography, everything that you're doing. I'm also a part of the Uranian SIG, so I will be at that lecture as well. And we want to say thank you, because, when I look at the pictures of you and your husband, when I look at the pictures of you and your grandson, when I look at all of the family, the friends, the joys that you guys have, the celebrations of life, everything that has happened to you, we are thankful that we had the opportunity to know you and the opportunity to be experiencing you through your journey in astrology, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. Just to hear you talk about the meridian of the year, the meridian of the day, just to hear you talk about those things, and I've been in those lectures. I've been in the astrocartography lectures. I've also been in the room where somebody wants to know, hey, do you know a good astrocartographer astrologer? And then your name comes up, stuff like that. It's just amazing how we are able to go through this journey and meet the people that we meet and come into contact with the people that we come into contact with. And I just think that what you're doing is a phenomenal job. And like I said, you guys are pushing the needle. You're keeping astrology moving. And I love, just how you guys are doing it. You guys are very open. You guys are always willing to help people. You're always willing to go the extra mile, and so it's just amazing, your journey, and we just wanted to say thank you.
Well, really, thank you so much. And speaking of pushing the envelope, Gary is really pushing the envelope beyond Uranian to what he calls symmetrical. And the work that he's doing is really incredible. So I think he would be a great interview for you.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because I don't totally understand everything that he's doing, but other people do. And that's okay, because as you said, I've got my grandson, I have my granddaughter, I have my husband. I've gone, where I want to go. I've been blessed. I've lectured, in Turkey. I've lectured in England. I've lectured all over this country. I've had students and clients literally from all over the world. And, it's just been a fantastic journey, and I'm forever grateful. I don't know what to say. I have gotten a lot of thanks. A couple of people in particular, I'm not going to say who they are and what they said, and so I appreciate hearing it from you in this forum, as opposed to a little email or comment on Facebook. Yeah, it's been great. I could have made maybe a lot of money in other fields, a lot more than I have here, but this is what I love, and you can't put a number on that.
Yes. And so, Madalyn, tell the listeners how could they get go and get a copy of Solar Fire or Nova Chart Wheels. Also, let them know how to get in contact with you. Somebody may be wanting to know more about astrocartography, or maybe becoming an astrocartographer. Somebody who does astrocartography and learns about it. Tell us your email, social medias, or how they can get in contact with you, and also how can we get this great software called Solar Fire. And also, those of you who are Uranian or who are listening, who may want to study Uranian, may want to also get the Nova Chart Wheels.
Yeah. So the programs, the software is available at our website, which is www.alabe.com. Someone else had Astrolabe, and rather than go with something long like Astrolabe Astrology software, we just shortened it to ALABE. So it's ALABE.com, and you can purchase the programs there. And in terms of my own personal website, is Cape Cod Astrologer. So Cape Cod, like the place, astrologer, like what I am, .com.
Okay, those of you that are listening, you definitely want to go and get your copy of Solar Fire, also Nova Chart Wheel. Stay connected to Madalyn if you guys want to learn about astrocartography and also maybe become certified. She is over the program. You definitely can get in contact with that. Are there any places that you are speaking, lecturing, going to be talking at the end of this year that you may want us to know about?
Just this coming Sunday is the only thing I have booked right now. I was teaching at Kepler College, but I'm retired from that, so I have no classes coming up or anything like that. Gary and I have, kicked around the idea of maybe doing, some sort of Uranian classes. He's doing a workshop on the winter solstice.
Yes, I definitely want to be on that.
Yeah, and that's going to be, let me see, solstice talk. It will be on, why doesn't it say, there's a stupid box that's creating an issue for me. You didn't give us the date. It'll be available live and via Zoom. You have to call here, which is 508-896-5081 to pay. It's usually right around Thanksgiving time, but it is scheduled. He says it's scheduled after the USA presidential election. So yeah, it's probably like right before Thanksgiving, somewhere in there. I wish he had given us the date yesterday, but he's 73 too.
Have you taken a look at anything regarding the election, Uranian wise?
Yeah, I've been saying it. I gave a lecture for the Chicago NCGR, Northern Illinois NCGR. I forget when it was, maybe July. But even before that, I've been saying, and of course it was in that lecture, might have even been June, I don't remember when it was, but I started out that lecture. The first thing I said was, because I was going through all my commander-in-chief formulas that had worked in the past for different presidents and didn't work for the losers. I said, let's cut to the chase. Kamala Harris will be inaugurated. And everybody was like, well, what's going to happen to Biden? And I said, I don't know. They said, is he going to die? Or I thought maybe he would get sick and not die. And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't know. But it's going to be her. And I looked at some possibilities of what, critical times for Biden. I came up with July 27th. I think he actually resigned on the 20th. So I was off a little. So that's what I think.
Okay. Well, I mean, that commander of the chief, thing that you got going on seems to be very accurate.
It's Sun plus Kronos minus Zeus. And what I do is I look at that formula on Inauguration Day and the transiting formula and see if it picks up something like through solar arc. So most often, like with Obama and Biden and I can't remember, but invariably, the person taking the oath to become commander-in-chief would have that directed to the cardinal axis or directed, to their Venus or their Sun. So the beauty of it is it could even work without a specific birth time.
Yes.
And I used to do election day back in the day. Arlene Nymark, my dear friend, the other big Arlene in Uranian, she and I would do the chart for Dixville Notch, 12:01 a.m., Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, because that was always the first voting. They were the first people, and that for us was election day. But now, of course, with early voting and, there is no start to election day. So that's why I believe the inauguration chart is the way to go. And everybody's going to have a certain amount to say, they're going to be in the public eye. People are going to vote for them. That doesn't mean they become president. So another possibility that people were conjecturing when I said Kamala would be the one to take the oath of office was that, maybe Biden wins and then can't serve, and she's, because she was elected vice president, she becomes president. But, she's proved herself to be a force unto herself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said, we will definitely be tuned in. We will stay connected to everything that you have going on. I will be on the Uranian Sig talk this weekend, and looking forward to it. And Madalyn, we just wanted to let you know that we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.